Hey y'all, and welcome to Stoop Talk Artist Takes, a podcast centered on art, being an active community, and sharing resources through lived experiences. I'm your host, Larissa Frimpong, the founder of Stoop Talk. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, educator, curator, and lover of all things archival methods. I'm from the South and currently based in the Midwest. And so for my first season, I wanted to be in conversation with contemporary artists, educators, and creatives. So please welcome our guest, Katharen Wiese. Y'all, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about Kat so y'all can get to know her. Katharen Wiese is a multidisciplinary artist from Lincoln, Nebraska, currently residing in New Haven, Connecticut. Wise joined the Art and Design Department in 2024 as the first community engaged teaching fellow in partnership with Yale School of Art. She holds a BFA in studio art from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln 2018 and an MFA from Yale University 2024. Before entering graduate school, Wise was a community arts organizer in the Everett and near South neighborhoods of Lincoln, Nebraska, where she coordinated public art projects, creative placemaking workshops, and developed a community art residency. Kat's artistic background spans figurative painting, printmaking, murals, and collage. Her work engages the actualities of commodity culture and its relationship to racial and environmental harm through archival research and reclaimed materials. Her work has been featured in exhibitions at the Yale Peabody Natural History Museum, of 2024, the Clarinda Carnegie Art Museum in 2023, the Keisel Fine Arts 2022, the Museum of Nebraska Art 2021, the Charlotte Street Foundation in 2020, and the Union for Contemporary Art 2020, among other places. I love your background, love you as a dear friend. Super excited that we're able to just connect again today. It's been a little bit. So I guess first off, can you tell us a little bit more about your practice?
Yeah, so I started teaching in the fall 2024. So now I think of that as part of my practice as well. I'm teaching painting and I just taught drawing for the first time, which was like a whirlwind. I don't draw very much. So part of my teaching has been like, it's really been a part of my studio practice where I'm like learning things and teaching things and like kind of reacquainting myself with some practices. But I have a background in figurative painting. I started a project called I made the cornrows in 2021 where I was interviewing people in my community in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then making portraits that were a sort of call and response with these conversations. And then when I entered grad school, I became really invested in like, expanding my canon. Like I realized I was referencing pretty exclusively Black male painters, and I started to question like, what does that mean that I haven't been like referencing even the matrilineal artistic traditions in my own family. And so I became really interested in quilting. And you and I met at the G's Bend quilting retreat in Mississippi. And that was like a profound experience. I learned so much about quilting and like I connected with so many incredible women there. So that's all part of my practice. And now I'm really interested in like not just quilting, but the idea of the patchwork as a form. So that for me shows up in collage in like paper as well as quilting. So right now I'm making a lot of collage based works, which has been a part of my practice for like a really long time. And I think now I'm finally kind of finding the language to talk about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when we first met at the G's Bend Quilting Retreat, you had this profound ability to weave together materials that I didn't even think of at the time. You showed me that quilting was not only traditional, but the traditions and the craft that we learned could be expressed in different ways. And I think that was one of the things that really boosted my confidence during that residency because I was thinking, oh, I had never thought about it that way. So learning more about like the start to the progress now of how your practice started, would you say that there are certain materials that have been always prevalent in your practice, or do you think it's been more of like, oh, I like this right now, or this fits here, or this would make a good drawing? Like, what do you think about those materials now?
Yeah, that's a good question because my materials have been something where people often come into my studio and they'll ask me like what holds all these things together? Like you have so many different ways you're
Yeah.
approaching this work. And I I think part of it is because I do think about ideas. I also think about material histories, and I became really interested in the brown bag test when I was in undergrad. And so craft paper, I was like collecting brown bags and then printing on them and thinking about colorism and my own identity and like my relationship to this like system of discrimination, which I think most Black people know about, but some people don't know about. It's like even at Howard University and like different HBCUs, there's like documentation of there being fraternities where they put a brown bag on the door, and if you're not lighter than the color of the bag, then you can't enter that space. So it's like I was thinking a lot about that. I was like, oh, depending on the time of the year, like some people, like you'll pass. It's very subjective, right? It's both subjective, it's discriminatory, and so I was thinking about the layers of that, and it's been
Mhm.
interesting because I for my thesis work in 2024, I had made a collage made with pallets and cardboard. And so this like history of craft paper came up again because cardboard's made out of craft paper, but then it's in this dialogue with like commerce and movement. And so I think of it as like my material associations are like kind of like branching out and making more and more connections. And sometimes I'm afraid they only make sense to me. So I'm like that history of movement and the history of product movement and how that relates to race and identity is like I wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for like objectifying humans in a mass movement, right? So it's like that's something I think like for yeah, so I think about that as like that's one kind of movement, and what do all these different movements like mean over time. So
Mm.
yeah.
Powerful statement. The first thing that came to my head when you said movement and branching is when I see your work, I think a lot about migration as thought. And since it's also an action that we're doing, things are moving actively, not just on the product scale, but our physical bodies, our spirituality, the way we create. Would you say that these themes around your identity and your materials and your family and migration are something that you came to understand later, or was you knew coming into the work that you wanted to talk about these things? You wanted to make sure that, like you said, with the maternal archives, that you wanted to make sure that was present. What can you explain a little bit more about that? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, like I think part of it was reclamation is really so like reclamation and the patchwork are like two conceptual frameworks, which are also material frameworks in quilting that I think of as like that's the thing for me about quilting that I think is so powerful is that you're finding things that are discarded and you're centering them in a composition as the art making, as the beauty. So like the margin becomes a center. So I think that repositioning is super powerful. And I think it's something that you can think of as a narrative device and as a environmental um necessity, as an environmental kind of urgency. And so that's not something that I think is explicitly said in many African American conceptions and artistic conceptions of quilting, which for me is actually really important. So I think of it as both like, how do Black folks like sometimes like we're making environmental work without ever naming it that. Like it's actually doing that, whether or not it was meant to do that. And so I think that process of reclamation is really powerful, and so part of how I arrived at like my thesis work was like this process of reclaiming materials and then also making like associations with the materials. So I did have this image in my head of like this figure that's sort of in flight and maybe like a sort of like they're running from something, they're running to something. And yeah, so I think I was looking at the painting by Kerry James Marshall. It's called it's like a one of his paintings where it's like a vignette of a couple and it's like a nude couple and they're running like in front of a prairie scene, and there's like butterflies and birds flying around, and so it looks like they're like coming out of the Garden of Eden or something. But then on
Hmm.
the bottom left side of the painting you see there's like a sidewalk, so they're in like a right of way space in a contemporary setting, and the sidewalk, this like little sliver of sidewalk, is the only thing that implies that this is not a timeless image, but it's a present tense image of Black folks running naked through a field. So I thought that this image was in my head of like this present and past tense figure that's like running. And having just moved from Nebraska and thinking about some of the ways I felt unsafe in Nebraska and also some of the things I'd hoped for moving to um the New Haven to the north, as like so many black people have over time. Like I started to think about that and that history in my family of like people moving for opportunity, people moving because they don't feel safe in certain ways. And yeah.
Wow, we always have deep conversations. My thoughts. First, firstly, thank you for explaining that, because that was a personal thing that I think we juggle with as Black artists all the time. Is like the canon or the idea of Black art or African American art, especially when it comes to craft. Like who can make it, what qualifies it as the thing, and then where it can go from there. And I think about that often, especially after we left G's Bend, because I was new to quilting, but I was new to having that, I would say, definition in place, because there's a lot of people talking about, Black art now. And if you don't claim your identity or your art as Black art, then there's all types of things that people question. And I think that's a very interesting thing when it comes to identity, because when you were saying what happens in the present tense is like such a powerful thing. We're in the contemporary now. We're making things now for our lived experiences right now. And when we combine that with going back with, I would say, a lot of Black art that I've seen is more traditionalist. The objects are mainly used for function. For example, the quilt. We made from the objects what we could to survive. We embedded our memories, our thoughts, and our lineage in those things. And then when they were, I would say, deemed good enough to be art, then it gets into the conversation of, oh, is it craft or is it fine? And then I'm really I'm really interested in how you were also saying that, as another shared experience, when you move from a place, when you move from a hometown, there's such a big, I would say, it's a culture shock going from hometown and how you've devised your entire being, and then going somewhere where you think the trajectory can be different. And in art, I feel like we have like this very stagnant bubble. Sometimes you just get hooked into the same cycle of art, and the people who are surrounding those cycles just we all flock together, essentially. So it's interesting that you have noticed that in your work, and I'm really excited to see where you continue to take that, because it's one of those things where it's a challenge for me also. I feel like to understand what I'm making currently, and to understand that there is always more to look at, just from the fine. I had no idea that cardboard was made out of craft paper, so that's a fact that you're doing today. You're also helping me to re-look at some of the James Marshall paintings, because that one slipped my mind. I was trying to look it up. I was like, hold on. I was like, wait. So I love those are things that you're continuing to explore, and it makes me feel that I have a deeper connection to the work, because I have the ability to look at not only your ideas, but where you're also tracing it through the art and lived experience. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I find it like it's like the way I connect the dots isn't always obvious to other people. So it's like it's actually kind of a pleasure for me to voice this and to talk about it. And it's something I want to practice doing more, is like helping
Yeah.
people get inside of where the work is coming from and what motivates it. And another thing that I've found really fascinating about craft paper, and that I really like actually identify with, is so, and that I think is funny, is that the artwork I made for my thesis, a lot of people were coming into my studio and saying like, this isn't archival. Like you're spending hundreds of hours on this and it's gonna yellow. And like, how funny is it that this work is going to yellow? This word yellow is very
Yellow.
historically relevant for an identity position like mine and like yours. So I was like, that's really funny. And so I started playing with like, and that made me actually more invested in card paper, like craft paper and cardboard as a material, because like what it would it mean to like play with that yellowness or the yellowing of the paper as a mark in itself or as a gesture. And so I've been making my own paper and like playing with acidity, and that's something I really want to like push further, but it takes a lot of time to actually expose paper to light so that it will change color that much. And to do that as a drawing is like kind of a durational project. So like that's something I would love to like get deeper into and show soon, but it's yeah, like I said, it's a durational process. So yeah.
I love it. I watched an I guess it would be an Art 21 and it was talking just about like durational pieces, and I thought a lot because we both work with lineage, I feel like, or legacy of some things. And it was just saying that a lot of black art is based, over time. It's not like you create something then it immediately goes out into the family. Most of the times those works end up becoming archival or just in a place where it has yellowed or it gets passed through so many things. And I've been thinking about that a lot, especially when I was coming up with questions for your interview, because I wanted to ask them, just because I wanted to know like how far you're willing to take it. I think it's such a fascinating thing to just get brain dumps as an artist, and you're like, oh, craft paper, yes. Oh, someone had a conversation with me and said it will yellow and they're scared about it, but that led me to, oh, I want to make a durational project. Oh, I want to bring it back and dump it in an acid bath, or I want to research, more figural gestures or something. Like, so I just love the way that processes make us think. I think a lot of times, sometimes personally, like I'll just like step back and be like, oh, there's so many steps that I have to take in order to get to the thing that's in my head, and that it like can deter you. But then I remember that there's just so many moments that are just like, they're mundane and magical at the same time. They just have that ability to transport you. And I think that your work is one of the ways in which I am now like trying to explore, just from our personal conversations, of what it can mean to create out of those more, I guess you would say, ordinary objects, just using your hands or using the for example, your cardboard series, that I am most familiar with, and just using, the rips of the paper, how does that look in the frame. And I just find it really dope, to
Thanks.
say the least. I find it really dope.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good. It's like good. I'm like, there's so much politics present in our daily lives, like in the daily materials we interface with, like and the things we see on the side of the road. Like I feel like there's so much there that like is evocative of like how commercial our world is, how we're seen within it, like what function we play. So I'm like, yeah, it's all here. That's my theory. My theory is like it's all around us and we shouldn't have to do like too much to like be
Hmm.
able to mine like for meaning and find art stuff to explore. So like yeah. Yeah.
Well, to backtrack a little bit, can you speak a little bit more about commodity? I think I remember reading in your artist statement a little bit more about what you think about commodity in art.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting because so when I'd started my project like in 2021 or 2020, and I was like making these portraits, these like call and response portraits of people in my community and my friends and my family. Like these are all Black folks, and I as I like as the project went into exhibitions, as it went out into the world, I became increasingly aware of like how my work was received and understood, or how little of it was understood, because we have been, I think, maybe this is changing now, but we've been in a sort of Black art renaissance, right, where the Black figure is valued. There have been like record breaking auctions for Black artists, and we're in a moment where my work was like people were primed to receive it, and not just like maybe conceptually, but the market at times was primed to receive it. And so it's like I would get emails from people who were interested in my work, which is awesome, right? I'm an artist. I'm not trying to I like to sell my work. Like I'm really that's wonderful. But there is also I think I started to understand the commercial side of my practice. I think that it gave me like the second consciousness of how the black figure functions and for whom. And I think it made me question, how are artists being treated? What's being asked of them? What are they being encouraged to make? What are they being discouraged from making? And how can my work function in a sort of self-awareness of its own commerciality? Like, just that it would, if I'm going to have a portrait of my mother, for example, which I sold to a woman who she was my former boss. She came in really wonderfully with her son and with her husband and had asked to buy this painting of my mother. And I was really excited by that because it was like this intimate personal relationship I have with somebody I know who owns my work. And unfortunately, that's not always what happens to your work. It doesn't always, like, you don't always have control of where it goes. You don't always have control of like um those different things. And so I was thinking, how can my work clap back to, if it's like somewhere where if it's somewhere where I don't have control of it anymore, how can it still be kind of like self-aware of its. And so I think I did identifying like commodity or commodity materials is like part of how I think about that, is like, yeah, it's just an object. It's just a product. I put a lot of myself into my work. We all, as artists, like to think that there's a certain amount of life in it because of how much time you pour into it, but it's also a commercial object. And so I think I still haven't fully maybe resolved that like tension of the kind of spiritual resonance of something, the commercial value of it, and then also like the thing I love. I think the thing I love maybe is that the value that's created from the work is my value. Like, the materials are so insignificant in terms of value, that the value really is what I put in it. It's
Hmm.
my hands, it's my time, it's my attention. And so that's what you're really buying. It's not made out of gold, right? It's made out of like a certain kind of care. So
Hmm.
I think that's, hopefully that's part of the talking back too, is like, how do you, what does it ask of you to, how are you asked to behave in front of an object which is made with a certain level of care?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I feel like a lot of times we don't have conversations about the AE effects of things. Like when you speak of an artwork, I find that it is always a living piece, even if it is an object. You know, at some form, it has a purpose. Whether it's just to sit on a wall, whether it gets the opportunity to be loved and enjoyed and taken care of in a space that the artist is also comfortable with. And then there's that other side where it's either an object at that point that's being policed, is in a gallery setting, is in a museum setting, is in an academic setting to be dissected and studied. So everything about it, there is some level of care or not caring imbued in what we are making. And so a lot of the time when I'm thinking about my own work, that has what has steered me away from selling my work. Actually, I've been in a lot of spaces where I became so attached to the work because it was my family's faces. You know, it was portraits of my parents. It was portraits of my grandparents on a sharecropping farm. You know, things of that nature that I didn't want people to be able to say like, "Oh, I have this." But then I think hearing the I think that hearing more about what you said about it in terms of care has maybe helped me start thinking again about what that can actually look like and how I can interpret it as the value. And I think that one of our big value systems in humanity is through art making. And so, if the artist and the art are in unison, I think that that is um, the intention and can be put forth. You know, I feel like at a certain point, we can't protect everything we put out there, right? Like all of our images that I have on Instagram, I don't own that mess, even though I think I do, but I don't. I know I don't. all the things that, from all of our social media to things on ancestry, blank, 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 all of those things are art, but they're also imbued with our care over generations. They're things that are purposeful, but also living at the same time. They're ever changing. And I think when I put that into my artistic practice, there comes a time where there's always questions about how myself as a Black woman and a Black artist specifically feels about that. Everybody wants to know what's the end game, and sometimes the work just has to be the work, and
Yeah.
and you just have to be the artist, and you got to let it go. And I think that's what scared me for a long time, is that I didn't have that control over how Black bodies and Black art were perceived. And yeah, it's a really interesting thing for me to hear again, that the value is what we put in as the artist of that work, um,
Yeah.
regardless of our identity, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. Like, yeah, I think it's like the feeling of your work is trending. Your work is trending, which means it's also temporarily valuable, which means people's investment in it is fleeting. And that's not to say that I think that's how I felt at certain moments, is like, I'm not sure about the authenticity of your interest in my practice.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm not certain of it. And so I think like that was something that kind of put me off put me off a bit, and it is something that like became more forward in my brain, and
Hmm.
it shifted my practice. It really did shift my practice, and I think part of it was like a feeling of like wanting to protect the people that I was making portraits of. And now I'm at a point where I feel like I've made a meaningful negotiation between those two kinds of that kind of conflict between this group of people that I feel compelled to make images of, in part because of the representation that I didn't have in Lincoln, Nebraska. And also like the feeling of knowing that these images are now the kind of images I was invested in are popular. And
Yeah.
so knowing that I need to do something else, and it's kind of fun. Like I'm actually having a lot of fun doing something else and kind of finding a way to hybridize different concerns and being free to explore um but like the porosity, like a certain amount of porosity, because I'm like I'm invested in Black figuration. I'm also invested in like in I've always been invested. My investment in Black figuration has always been to undermine a category identification, because it's like I both identify as a Black artist, and I also am here to interrogate that and make it a more porous place for
Hmm.
myself and for other people to inhabit. And both like yeah, thinking about how many different experiences that looks like. And so I think that's always been my job, and so I still think that's my job, and it looks different than I thought it would, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's so many shifts happening. For example, when you said like the value of Black portraiture, like right now the rage is Black abstraction. So one of the things that you can definitely see is what is so fleeting was also like no one could see past it at the time that it became popular. No one ever thought this era would end until it does. And then you have to like really think and renegotiate not only with yourself but with the community and with the worlds in which the art is placed, because you think there is security in those things. I think a lot of times art is placed, especially Black art, is not only placed on a pedestal at some times, but it also becomes monolithic. And then after that, when other Black artists want to challenge that, there's always that ebb and flow of, oh well, right now it should be this type of work in the gallery. And again, like you said, I don't know if I want to do that, because you're only invested in what you can see and profit from. And so I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, is like if people are able to backtrack on my existence, because my existence is in the work, then I feel that I just feel a little in there.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I'm also curious too. You said you make a lot of work as well about Lincoln, Nebraska, like where you're from, Nebraska. And so, would you say that there are places that you gain inspiration from or love to create in? Or do you think now that you are in, Connecticut, or you go somewhere in a residency, that that place impacts your work?
Yeah, totally. Right now I'm doing a residency at the Eli Whitney Museum and workshop in Hamden, Connecticut, and it's like a 20-minute bike ride from my house, and I
Good for
I
you.
love it. Like I ride like a very littered trail on my way to my studio, and then I like wind through some woods, and then I'm like at this big red barn, and it's full of like all kinds of stuff. And I'm right now, I've been making like a bunch of books this week for a camp that I'm doing this summer, and I've been like pressing flowers. And I've had this painting in my studio for 4 months. I tend to do this. Like I'll be like, I'm dilly dallying, and I'm making this giant painting, which I'm spending my whole life on. Like that's how I work. I don't know why. I don't know why. So I have this giant painting I've been spending 4 months on, and it's a portrait of a friend of mine. She has made nail art for me for a long time for different events and things, and she's super talented. She was a big inspiration for me when I was like kind of coming to a sense of myself in my early 20s. And so it's like a portrait of her wearing a big hat, laying on a lawn chair, and it's the apocalypse. So there's like in the lawn chair, it's like sinking into the ground. And then so my lawn wasn't mowed for months. It wasn't mowed for a long time because part of it was winter, but then it started growing and it was crazy. Like there were so many weeds and dandelions, and it was like a prairie out there. It was beautiful. And so I was like, you know what's happening? You know how we know the apocalypse is coming? Because the earth is going to reclaim all of this bullshit. Like, it's not ours anymore. And so, like, the dandelions are like taking over this lawn chair, and there's like an asteroid. And so, I'm always like making impressions from living things. Like, my thesis work was made from a lot of like wildflowers and plants that I found in Connecticut. And so, part of the story of that work is like, it's moving from this kind of surreal cornfield to like this prairie scape, and so it's actually made out of the living things that are local to like where I'm at. So yeah, a lot of it's actually physically made out of the materials are local, and then but the subject is separate. So I think that's interesting how I'm like returning back to this work after taking a break from it during grad school. Like I'm returning back to some of these portraits to kind of resolve them. I'd
Hmm.
had a show that was planned that was going to be in Nebraska, so I was like, this seems like a pretty good time to resolve this work. And so yeah, that's what's like, it's still kind of in between. The work is in between places, and I think that's good because it's about that sort of that movement, I guess. So it makes sense that it's like doing that.
Yeah. And so would you see this particular work, the pressing of flowers, what you're doing at the Eli Whitney Museum, to continue, or do you think you're gonna pivot?
Um, s- so I'm like, I've done it before, which makes me think I'll do it again. Anytime I do something twice, I'm like, actually, if I do something once and I like it, I'll probably do it again. It's just sometimes it takes a really long time for it to like circle back to something.
Yeah.
So I'm also doing this residency for 2 years, so I can't imagine what I'll be doing like a year so far. Like I don't know what I'll be doing a year and a half from now artistically.
That's exciting though. And
Yeah.
congrats on the another residency. Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really great. So I think when you're just so passionate, and I love that about like your thinkings and your energy, because I can see that you're excited to be a maker of things. You're excited to think about all the thoughts. And it's really exciting to know more about your practice in a way where I feel like it's very exploratory, but it's also both challenging, what I feel personally you think the work can or could be or are making. And then you use the word interrogate. Interrogate. You said that it was your job to interrogate. And I'm really proud to hear you say that, because a lot of the time I don't hear it often, especially when it comes to looking at a work that is very personal, but it stems those in between spaces where it's interpersonal and intrapersonal. There's so many things that fit into those categories, and especially as I would also view you a community based artist. I feel like a lot of your work is rooted in community making as well, community building maybe. And so when you are teaching and in the community, I feel like engagement is really important to you. So could you share a little bit more about, what draws you to continue sharing and teaching as, I would say, both a multidisciplinary artist and educator?
Oh, thanks. I feel also thank you for saying all that. I feel this is like such a useful and edifying conversation to have right now. So I really appreciate it. Yeah. So as
Hard
an
eyes.
what was that?
Is it hard eyes?
Hard days. Yeah, yeah. No, it's so good. Like I've just my practice has shifted so much. So it's like finding the language to talk about it and being confident of it and having someone like see it a little bit. It feels good. It's really good. So I appreciate it. And so the education is like I love learning. Like I really love it. Like I love learning new things and I think it's actually like I sometimes want to rein it in. I'm like I really just need to stop learning so many things. Like I'm good at a few things. I should just do what people want from me and like stop learning. No, but I can't do it. I can't do it. So I love learning. Like this week I taught myself how to do Coptic stitch binding, fringe binding. Like I'm just always making stuff. Like a friend of
You're
mine,
so cool. What the heck?
we were saying like a friend of mine. I was like asking him because I was doing my interview questions with my friend David in Mexico. I was asking like, what are five things you think of as central to your understanding of yourself? And he was like sculpture, like a really he was like talking about sculpture, and I was like, for me, it's not even art. It's like making stuff, like just
Hmm.
like making stuff. Like I could be making dinner, and for me that feels
And it's so cool. Yeah.
yeah, and like I love making dinner. I love making books. I love making art. Like I love making stuff. Like something about that process of like making something beautiful, delicious, whatever. Like it feels really like I feel there's some sort of resolution in that for me. Um and teaching feels like I want to inspire people to like have that satisfaction of like, oh, I made something. Like I was really excited to teach my students not just like how to make a painting, but like how do you build a stretcher? Like build a whole panel. How do you make something from the ground up? And I think that's art is one of the few places where you have a pretty short timeline of like how do you make something from the ground up that's yours that you conceived of. And I think it's really empowering to be able to do that and how that could translate to like the Astor Gates is thinking about how does that translate to building a city or a neighborhood or growing a community. And I think those things are all interrelated as your sense of agency as an artist is really high for most of us, right? Which is why we make things and why we're living in the world the way we do. And so I think the more agency that you feel that you have, the more creative you can be and the more like connections you can make. And I'm still trying to grow in that sense of like what is my agency not just as an artist but like as a small business, what's my agency as like a new member of the New Haven community that's not a grad student, like what can I contribute and how can I change the things that I see need shifting. And it's always a moving target and it's always kind of hard too, I think it takes a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think doing the thing in general is just I just find it so cool. Sometimes the most mundane things like really teach you a lot that you don't really realize. Like doing the same thing every day in your practice to just build that stamina or that skill can just turn out to be so rewarding and you don't realize it until you do it, 1,000 times. And then with teaching, I just feel like we're the same way. Like when I get in a place with students, I just want them to be able to say they learned something and they didn't feel like they had to learn it. It was just like it just came to them. Like it was fun, it was instinctual, and I feel like that is like some of the best ways to learn, who you want to be as an artist, like I had a student in a photo class, you start some students, at the ground level, like some will come in knowing more about film cameras than me, and I'm like, yes, teach me something. And then there's some students where they're like, I can't use a computer. And those are polar opposites, but at the end of the class, if that student is out here schooling me on Photoshop on a Mac computer, and then the other person has like switched their lane and is now doing more cartoon things inside of their bookmaking skills, learning more about graphic design, I feel like that's a win. And that's what my students were teaching me. So I just, yeah, I love to see where the doing can take people. And art just, it's just a fascinating thing to me. And I'm also really glad that you feel like this conversation with me is helping you be more confident in that language, because you're saying the language, it's making sense to me. So
Yeah, I'm glad.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, and it's, I think it's nice because you're even challenging me, like I said before, to really, think more about it, because at the end of the day, sometimes, just repeating yourself can really offer a great reward. Like just saying it out loud or in a different environment than what's in the head can really help
No, it's good. It's
sometimes.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. Yeah, I would love to take a photo class with you. I want to take a class with you.
Oh, you're sweet.
Yeah, I love teaching, and I think it's like it's also very humbling, like what you said about when your students teach you stuff, and I think you have
So
to be
cool.
open and available and ready for,
Yeah.
like, I had students who schooled me on digital art. It was awesome. Like, it was so
Yes.
awesome. So I did a work of the week in my drawing class, and I had a student who had this was like the second semester I'd had them. Phenomenal student, like very hardworking, very passionate, very creative, great classmate. They were so fun to have in class. And they knew that, like, I used digital tools, I used Photoshop and Illustrator to make references. So for in
Mhm.
my mind, like in my practice, not in my mind, in my own individual practice, digital like making is often a means towards an end. It's not an
Mhm.
end in itself very often in
Mhm.
my practice. And so this student, like, had sensed a bias in me, and like they had made this incredible work of the week presentation that was all on digital art specifically to school me, and I was like called out, and also just so delighted that, like, we had a dialogical space in my classroom where a student felt comfortable to do that. It happened, our whole class had this really great discussion. It was informative for me. It was useful for them because it's like we were able to, like, kind of have play the devil's advocate. I'm like, if I'm gonna be here, like, I might as well just, like,
Yeah.
bring forward whatever thing is, like, I was like, why make a digital painting that looks like an oil painting instead of just making an oil painting? We had conversations like that, and
Yeah.
it was really good. It was really good. So it's like I think that is really, like, that's been exciting, is just like better understanding different practices, where students are coming from, like like we're not that different in age, but 10 or 15 years is like different enough in terms of technology and making that, like, that's been valuable. And then, being responsible to, like, really internalize the things you're teaching. That's how I feel when I teach, is like,
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you to make an abstract painting, and I'm going to inform you a little bit about abstraction. Like, everything, single thing I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try and make sure that that's stuff that I've really,
Doing what you preach. Yeah.
yeah, that I'm coming from some, maybe not authority, but that I have something to say about that beyond just like what's on a slide presentation or something. And so I learned a lot about the history of abstraction recently by, like, just like assigning an abstract assignment, like where my students went to the UAG, the Yale University Art Gallery, and like we went and saw paintings, and they, like, made a master copy of an abstract work, which I knew was going to be very hard for them because a lot of them were very representationally oriented. So, like, what does it mean to really study the process behind a painter that's working abstractly, and to appreciate their thinking and their methodology?
Mhm.
And I have a lot of it also, like, yeah, I learned so much about, like, Russian abstraction during that time. And then I started making really basic square things, and I'm like, wait, this is inside me. I'm just making a bunch of squares now. Like, I'm making so many simple forms. But yeah, it's good. I love teaching for that reason. Like, I feel like I'm growing so much as I'm teaching. The
Yeah.
struggle is, like, as you know, is just that balance of being a working artist, being a studio artist, and also an educator
Yes.
is a big time, a lot of time commitment. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's my challenge, as I think it is for most people who teach.
Yeah, to reiterate that again, yeah, the teacher can also be teached. I feel like that's what's so exciting about art and what I'm learning more and more teaching, especially like foundation classes, for example. Like some of those students, they just know stuff that I'm like, where? And it's been really exciting to see what they can also bring into a classroom and then into their community, because everyone comes with their own, instincts and knowledge again. But when you like combine it with like being able to be in a space that's safe enough to have open dialogue, to be challenged, and the professor is not just there to be an authority. Yeah, I really like what you said. Like that authoritative figure is not, so present that you can teach a lesson, and there can be structure, and then there can be an ability to kind of upset that structure and be like, okay, well, this is how this research really implies to that student. And I feel like it takes them further, in some places, rather than, all the time getting a set assignment, and then that assignment has to be done to my standard. I feel like I love a student's work that's able to reinterpret what I'm saying and make that assignment their own, because I feel like that's the only way you're going to be an artist. If you're just doing sometimes what people think art is, which is copy and paste, which I digress. That's a different conversation. But if they do that, cool. Everybody wants to still like an artist. Like we do it daily. There's not one thing in this life and in my practice personally that I can say is just mine, other than maybe my lived experiences. So it's really fascinating to be able to put all that together, in a learning environment, I would say, especially if you're in like an academic space versus a community space. Like just being able to share that learning environment is just so exciting. And I'm just really excited for more, to see more of your community work, like online and stuff. I'll be snooping on your Instagram, and I'm like, oh, you're here and here, and like it just seems like everyone is really enjoying that place and that safety to create what and who they are with you. So that's a really exciting thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. I'm like really inspired by your like the Stoop Talk and how it's expanded. And I was looking at your like zine making workshop and snooping on that stuff, and I was like, oh, that looks also that looks fun. I want to go to the collage and zine workshop. Like, I wish I was there for that, but
I mean, since I'm in the Midwest, maybe I'll just like get over travel.
yeah, you let me know when you're moving to Illinois because I have people in Illinois and I have people in Nebraska, so I'm gonna be back in the Midwest this summer. But
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, so what's a chill question? I think, how would you describe your practice in one word? Maybe it's not a chill question, actually.
well, that's a thinker. That's a thinker. Yeah, you want me to answer that?
You don't have to, but maybe think about it. It's a challenge that I am asking. That's my one staple question that I have on every interview, and I like people to really think about it, because I feel like I said earlier with the brain dumps. When I think about my artistic practice, I always wanted to know what I guess the center bubble would be, and I haven't found one word I would say that could describe it. I have like branches. I definitely have like four words. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm always wondering if someone were to never meet me, again, legacy, never hear these conversations, don't have any access to me online. It was like kind of a word of mouth thing. There was a prompt where if someone was word of mouth talking about this artist, what is the one thing that they would say that would, bring more people to be in conversation with me? And so I'm curious about what people think their one word about their practice would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So think on it.
Yeah. I so it's like I've told a number of people like that one of the central concerns of my practice is the idea of the patchwork.
Hmm.
So the idea of the patchwork, the idea of the still not one word. So I'm like I could
It's a
say
sentence.
patchwork.
It's a sentence.
So I'm like that's a sentence. And then I also thought of the word unfold because like that feels like a good word for like the boxes, for also the way that I like pull apart paper bags, like you unfold them and then you tear them apart. I also like the word like I like the word reframe. I
Hmm.
like the word reframe. I like that word because it's like it supposes that there's already something in the image,
Hmm.
And then you're either reframing that thing, or it could also mean that you're putting something else in the frame altogether, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? So it could mean either thing. And I think that's a good word. I
I
just
like
wrote that.
I like your sentence in two other words. I like this. If you wanted to, you could shorten that sentence and just put like the first letter of each first letter of each word, and then it's a word.
What is that? PR. Wait. So patchwork. I forgot my third thing I said. Patchwork reframe. I think that was so it's just two. Is it just two?
No, your whole sentence before that. I was saying you can like put every word in the
Oh,
sentence, and that could be your word instead of
yeah.
having a
I
sentence.
can't think of what that word would be right now unless I wrote it out because I'm a visual thinker. But
Me
yeah.
too. That's why I'm not saying it. So
Totally.
I didn't write it down, so I'm like,
Yep.
I'll let you do that.
Yeah.
Oh, another fun question is right now, off the top of your head, top three visual media in general, songs, film, other artists you're inspired by.
Before I answer that, I also want to know what you answered to the one word.
Me, I don't have a one word. I have three.
What are your three?
So my three right now are it's a little bit of a modge podge. So I would say legacy slash lineage, just debating between those words. A community for sure. And then I'm also debating it again between see, I don't even know if I can say this word. So I would term it as the idea of looking at my identity as a light skinned black woman, but I don't know the word for that yet. So,
Mm,
yeah. Another sentence. I also have a
yeah.
sentence. I
Yeah.
also have a sentence. Yeah.
Like the optics of biraciality.
Ooh. Well, actually, when you said hybridization, I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about like the verb of hybrid. I really love, and then I've been thinking too like hybridization in terms of one going to the path of research and going to the path of knowing. So I feel like I know I'm a hybrid and I'm proud of it. Sentence. And then the hybrid nature of there's not one set thing, so that there could be a plurality, there could be different definitions, there could be again different learning. I love learning and researching, so those three things are very centered because when I think about community, like why I do Stoop Talk is to be in conversation about these things. So I don't think I can really go to a place where like the community isn't rooted in my work. I tried for a long time to be personal risk. I really did. I was like, no, I'm only gonna make stuff about me, care about nobody else. But then it just like it did that cyclical thing or infinite thing where like my rootedness just came back to doing this. Like I couldn't escape it anymore. And I love that idea. So yeah, that's why I'm asking people because I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I love that. I also think it's like, yeah, like I love that you in your pursuit of the personal found that it had to be communal because that's also who your person is. I like
yeah.
that. That's good. That's good.
Figured it out the stubborn way. That's what I'll
Yeah.
say. That's what I'll say. Yeah.
So stuff I'm listening to, media, etc. Okay, I just went to the Beyonce concert.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, that's top of mind. The visuals of her. Okay, this is the thing that's really in my brain. Okay. So she came out. It was towards the end of the set. I went with my sister and two friends in Jersey, and there's this scene where I call it a scene because the show just how it
It's a,
unfolds in
it's a
time.
movie. It's a whole production.
It's a
That
whole production, and they have a semi truck that they pull out onto the stage, and she has like a trucker hat on. And my dad's a truck driver. My dad owned trucks. Like we had trucks, semi trucks in my front yard in my neighborhood, and I would go on the in the truck with him. And so for me to see like a proud black woman like in this trucker thing, like weirdly synthesized something in me that I didn't know was inconsistent. I was like, it was really good. So I'm like, I have that visual in my brain. I'm currently reading a book by James Ree called Red Helicopter. I like went to the Yale Summit last week and was given this book by the author. He signed it. He was really a kind man, and he owned a business called Ashley Stewart. He was like the CEO of this business that almost went out of which went bankrupt, I think almost. And
Mm.
so he's a Korean American who's running this store for predominantly like plus size black women, and they like hire him enthusiastically. He's like, "Are you sure you want me to be the representative and face of your company?" And so it's like this really interesting story about how he is like working for this business, and like his story, and his parents like immigrated from Korea. And so I'm reading this like biography that's both about this business he starts and his um experience running this company with like a lot of love and a lot of what he says like kindness and math. That's like the idea of the book. So I'm reading that. And what other content? I'm gonna go really off base and share something that's not uh related to anything. My husband is really into like not really into, but he likes some anime. And so he introduced me to a show on Netflix called Frieren, and it's like this.
So good.
It's so good. Wait, do you watch it?
I love hearing.
Oh my god, I love this. Okay,
1,000-year-old
so
mage, if you all do not know.
it's really cute. It's actually really good because like a lot of like anime stuff I can't get into because like you'll be watching something and then you're like, wait, did that just get really horny just out of nowhere?
Okay, yes, yes,
But
yes.
this one's not like that at all. I feel like it's really good because the
Yeah,
it's just like the characters are really well developed. It makes me think of the Avatar when I was growing up. Like everyone has their own
yes.
little universe and identity, and like things feel very fleshed out. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, another one, I don't know if I would call it an anime, but I would. It's called Violet Evergarden, if you've ever seen it.
Think I have no, I have watched it. Me
Yeah.
and Scott watched that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think anime in that realm has also been like a really not up and coming, but up and coming in like I would say US standards of what people like know anime to be. Because most people I think would stay back in terms of, and I'm relating this to art people, so you don't think I'm just an anime nerd. I have levels to me. Like Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z. Like most people think that that is like the only genre or like animation style in terms of what it is. And I've been finding too, like on Netflix and other like Crunchyroll and things like that, that the animes that are coming out are like I've really been noticing that there's more one, like you said, character development, but it's really talking about like real world issues. Um, and I think that a lot of the time, a lot of animes do that, but the art style is being like reflected in a way that's like I feel is like gripping more audience members our age and like inspiring us to like watch things that have either political, emotional, or spiritual meaning. Like there's just so many things embedded in a lot of animes that are yeah I'm finding really fascinating, and I've always been an anime nerd. Yeah, and another one that I really like that I don't know if you've watched is uh, oh gosh, is it the Blue Eye or Bluest Eye? I think it's the Blue Eyed Samurai. To me, let me not say that. It's to me. Shirin is getting good. I don't know that debatable, but I don't know if you would like um Demon Slayer, but I feel like Demon Slayer could be animation style something creative that it could get you maybe hooked just by like interest.
I
And so,
sometimes do watch things just because they're pretty. And
yeah,
yeah, so
crazy budget, mind you. Like some of those things, like as an artist who like actually thinks about like how things are made, crazy budget. there's no way that y'all just making like one scene like that and it's just chill like 1,000. Like, no. I think about that a lot. It's just so many fight scenes, specifically in Demon Slayer for sure. But anyway, digress to that.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
because I'm gonna and be like, Cat, watch these.
Do it, do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, like I feel like the thing I want to watch that I haven't watched yet, because I had a friend convince me last weekend that I have to watch it because I don't like horror very much, but everyone's been telling me to watch Sinners. So I'm gonna go watch Sinners. Because like I read a book when I was in college that was about like the history of rock music, which is the history of black music, of course. And I listen to everything. Like all those old like guys that like sold their soul to the devil in order to like become expert guitarist. I was like, and she was like, yeah, that's literally what it's about. So I was like, okay, it sounds really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing I need to watch that I haven't yet.
Yeah, once you watch it, I would love to do a little another little book club meeting of like
Yeah,
a movie review. I would love to hear your thoughts.
it definitely it has that richness to it. I'm like every like it's rich. It's cinematically beautiful. So I'm that's on my list. That's on my
Yeah.
list.
It's really funny because in another interview I did with my friend Shannon Smith, we talked about Mr. Ryan Coogler again, and he did his thing.
Hmm.
Did his thing. He was
Yeah.
like, I don't care what none of y'all say. This is my movie. This is my next movie. And I feel like that's what, again, to tie it back to like our conversation of like visual media is like we just get so inspired by things as like artists. We take in so much more than I even think we give ourselves credit for. Like every little thing, I feel like artists are like, ooh, 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 ooh. Like let's learn something from that, or let's critique that, or something. And yeah, I just love being in conversation like this. I'm giddy now, so I'm gonna shut up. But it's just really cool to um, hear about your interests. Yeah,
Thank you. It was really fun, and thank you for your questions. They were really good. Like I didn't have to like try too hard to make meaning or sense of them because they all landed really easily, and like it was so
oh,
fun chatting with you and catching up a little bit. Yeah.
good. Thank you so much. Again, much love to you, my Tamara.
Tia Tamara.
And so thank you all so much for tuning into the episode with Kat. You can find Stoop Talk on my YouTube channel. All the links are in the description box, and please feel free to follow us on all socials. If y'all could really pop out and show Kat some love and follow us on YouTube and like and comment and share so that I can show true support of the community for the artists that I interview and to know if y'all really like what we're saying. I've linked Kat's bio and website in the description box so you can learn more about their practice. And as always, I'm your host, Larissa Frimpong, and it's the community and art for me.